We're live now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the rural city of Wangaratta. Today, the 26th of October, and welcome to our council meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, clause 91.4 of the Governance and Meeting Conduct Law provides the following. This public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be retained by council in accordance with council's legal obligations. As a visitor in the public gallery or online, your presence may be recorded. I would like to acknowledge that I am hosting this meeting from the lands of the Bangarang people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this meeting. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Victoria. Could we please stand for the prayer? Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people whom we serve. Amen. I'd just like to note that all councillors are present tonight. Our corporate management team with Director Goonan and Director Swart are here. Director Sarah Brindley is also online and looking forward to her participation in the meeting today. So thank you all for being here. We'll move straight to item number 7, which is the confirmation of the minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Herry.
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to move the motion as per the recommendation, subject to the following alterations. On page 35 of the minutes, where it reads amendment, it should read motion. So Councillor Benson did not move an amendment, he moved a motion.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Benson to second it. Any other councillor like to talk on that recommendation of the minutes, or the confirmation of the minutes? No? All those in favour of the confirmation there, the recommendation is moved. We have no conflicts of interest, but I'll move to, which is item number 8, on any item that is here where there is no conflict of any councillors here. So number 9 is a reception of petitions. It's 9.1, and it's a petition requesting the completion of remedial works and renovations at the Moyu Soldiers Memorial Hall, and I'll look to Director Goonan.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. This petition has been received at tonight's meeting. There is 284 signatures. The Hall Committee are requesting the completion of remedial works and renovations to the Moyu Memorial Hall. The recommendation is that the petition letter requesting the completion of the works be received, and that the petition be referred to the Chief Executive Officer for a report to be considered at a future council meeting.
Thank you, Director Goonan. Can I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Bussell to move, Councillor Fitzpatrick to second. Councillor Bussell, would you like to talk on the recommendation?
I'd love to, thanks Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank the community, Moyu community. This is a council asset, and the community are to treat this facility as if it's their own. And in 2019, this hall had 120 bookings for the year, which was pretty normal prior to COVID. And I would almost suggest that's more than our town hall in Wangaratta gets here. And for anybody who's been to the theatre in Moyu, they would be suitably impressed with this facility. And although it's old and looks different from the outside, it's a very warm building on the inside. And I think that it certainly needs to be looked at by our council, because it's such a valuable asset for the community of Moyu that is growing. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bustle. Councillor Fitzpatrick, did you want to talk on the recommendation? Would there any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? No? Councillor Bustle, would you finish off your talk?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to keep repeating this as many times as I can over the next 3 years, because it's such an important asset for the Moyu community. And the fact that the King Valley is one of the most upcoming places in the whole of Victoria. So anything we can do to lift the community of the King Valley is well worthwhile. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bustle. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. There's no hearing of deputations, and I'll move straight to councillor reports. Councillor Jack Herry, I'm going to look to you for a report.
Thank you, Marys. In less than a week, we will see the commencement of what is likely to be the most important global summit of this decade, the gathering in Glasgow of delegates from almost 197 countries, with many of the world's leaders attending in person for COP26. In this room, I have often spoken in support of increased local action on climate change. However, I acknowledge there is only so much that is within the sphere of local government control, given our communities operate within the context of state and federal jurisdictions and their policy settings. For the purpose of this report, I will turn my focus to the federal government, given it is they who are party to the imminent Glasgow discussions. Our communities throughout the municipality stand to lose a lot as a consequence of inadequate climate action. We rely heavily on agriculture for our economic prosperity, with well above the state average for jobs in agriculture. And it is our food and wine offerings underpinned by that agriculture that positions us to compete as a serious contender in regional tourism. We face frequent, occasionally devastating floods and the constant threat of bushfire, both disasters which will intensify in frequency and severity the further we see global emissions rise. The heat our region experiences in summers can be oppressive and is set only to climb with hotter, more frequent and longer heat waves. And while we are well endowed with water, we would be mistaken to think that just because it flows through our municipality, that alone is enough to guarantee us water security in an increasingly drought-prone future, where there is less to go around but everyone needs more. Finally, an already significant portion of our municipality's communities are of relative socio-economic disadvantage, and the prospect of striving to maintain standards of living and continue to deliver services and improve equity, all while operating within increasingly constrained resources, is a concerning prospect indeed. As such, I implore our federal government, when they represent our nation in Glasgow, to not only implement clear and ambitious targets that respond to the evidence, but to develop an innovative plan to deliver those targets. We need a strong plan which leaves none in doubt as to how we will contribute to and benefit from fair dinkum action. Net zero emissions by 2050 is a low enough bar that none should balk at it. 2050 was the focus of discussions in Paris in 2015. This is Glasgow, and the focus for Glasgow must be on increasing our targets for 2030. This is an opportunity for us to seize the change that is inevitable, a change that will happen to us if we are too short-sighted to seize it. And once we've grasped that opportunity firmly with both hands, we can then get on with leveraging it to propel our nation forward, particularly the regional communities like ours who stand to gain so much from the net zero transition. It is in the regions that renewable energy is being produced. There will be a need for industries and spin-off innovation to mop up the bountiful energy, bringing jobs and wealth creation to regional communities like ours. But the investment won't come without confidence in the policy settings. So I do hope our federal government can fill us with confidence that not only can we rest assured everything is being done at a national level that can be in order to shield vulnerable communities like ours from the more severe climate change impacts, but also confidence that we will be supported and enabled by a sound evidence-based policy to fully capitalise on the opportunities that are ours for the taking. But only if ambitious targets are set and a clear plan to meet them is put into action. So in closing, I'd just like to make it clear that I do present this report entirely as my own. It's a theme that arises obviously with the Glasgow conference bearing down upon us, but also out of numerous discussions with members of the community expressing concerns that our local efforts, while very worthwhile, are certainly hemmed in by a lack of ambitious national leadership in this space. And having said that, I definitely welcome any comments or actions from my fellow councillors that speak to the merits or otherwise of this report. Thank you, Mayor Rees.
Councillor Harry, thank you very much for your report, and thank you for stating that it's your own and the timing should coincide with the Glasgow site. I'll now look to Councillor Grant. Would you like to talk?
Thank you, Mayor Rees. I agree with Councillor Harry's comments on the need for global change action and how difficult it is for a municipality like the rural city of Wangaratta to be able to make really significant difference to it given our limited resources in our budget. It's certainly up to the state and federal governments to help us drive meaningful technological change in the area of climate and emissions control. It's going to help us as a council and a community deal with this issue into the future. Setting realistic targets is, however, admirable and a necessary aspiration. We should, however, not be over zealous in setting unrealistic targets based, I think, at the moment on technologies that we currently don't have, or relying on technologies that are at the moment inefficient or costly. We have to be cautious in the pursuit of worthwhile ideals so that we do not lose sight of what is possible and affordable. Or that very simply, we just don't set ourselves up to fail and take ourselves socially and economically back to the dark ages in the process. We must build on the good work that has already been done, and I believe a lot of good work has been done. We have to work together to achieve better targets and understand that whatever we do will also be guided by what's happening around the world. It may be a huge and difficult leap to go from 2050 targets to 2030, particularly as we know so little about how we will reach our targets and what these targets will actually cost us. Let's invest in technology, significantly invest in action that helps us to mitigate the impacts of climate change. However, let us not fall into the trap of moral posturing and spouting feel-good statements over practical and technologically sound improvements that will make a difference to the way we live and work. We've got a lot of work ahead of us and it's going to be difficult, but I think, it's the sort of thing that we need to work together on, and we need to work as a nation to achieve the best outcomes. And we're not going to be able to do that in isolation, and I mean that in a global sense as well. So, Mr. Mayor, that's just my thoughts on that particular issue.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. I'll now move to Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I move that both Councillor Harry and Councillor Grant's reports be tabled into the minutes? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Fitzpatrick. Can I have a raise of hands who is in favour of that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? 2. So we've got that noted there that Councillor Fitzpatrick, Councillor Harry, Councillor Fuller and Councillor Rees to note that into the, and Councillor Grant to note that in, Councillor Bustle and Councillor Benton not to have that noted in the report. So the recommendation is then carried. Thank you. Councillor Fitzpatrick, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let everyone know nominations are open for our 2022 Australia Day Awards. This is closing next Friday, the 5th of November at 5 p.m. So I ask our community, don't miss your chance to nominate those who really make a difference in our community. There are so many people and organisations in Wangaratta and our community that go above and beyond to make Wangaratta special. This is your chance to thank them. So if you know an outstanding volunteer, community group, individual, anyone who inspires you, please go on our council website to fill out our application form and take the time to nominate them for the 2022 Australia Day Awards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Very notable on that situation. So I think we'll move on to officers' reports and we'll move to corporate services. Item 13 and 13.1 is the 2021 to 2031 financial plan, and I'll direct to Director Brindley to give a report.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. So all councils are required to adopt a 10-year financial plan as part of the Local Government Act. The financial plan contains a range of information about our financial position and expected changes over the next 10 years, including highlighting our plans for rates and borrowings, capital works projects, and the assumptions that will make the biggest impact over the next 10 years. At the August council meeting, council endorsed the draft financial plan to be placed on public exhibition for community engagement, and we received 8 submissions from the community. Those submissions have led to improvements in the clarity and quality of the financial plan, and the incorporated suggestions are included in the updated financial plan that is attached. So the recommendation is now that council, having considered those submissions, adopts the 2021 to 31 financial plan attached to the report and notifies each person who made a submission writing of the decision and the reasons for that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Brindley. Can I have someone move that recommendation, please? Councillor Herry and Councillor Benton will second it. Did anybody want to talk? Councillor Herry, did you want to talk on the financial plan? Please, as the mover.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to speak specifically with regard to one change. But there wasn't a change log in there, so it might be a bit difficult for some people to track some of the changes, but this one was noted. It's in regards to section 4.4, what was decided. So that's what was decided as a consequence of outlining some of the actions as a result of the community engagement in the form of a survey of 89 respondents. I've got to say that I definitely agree wholeheartedly with some of the concerns expressed by some in the community regarding the rigour of the survey, I guess, and the extent to which confidence could be placed in it to derive conclusions from. As some pointed out, the sample size of 89 respondents was small, but also the methodological concern with respect that it was a voluntary survey definitely limited how broadly it could be generalised with those results. So I've just got some reservations, I guess, because under 4.4, item 2, there is a change to the item which effectively changes it to restate something which is ultimately an item in the environmental sustainable strategy, which is that we're going to develop a carbon reduction action plan, a way to reduce emissions and then implement that plan. Whereas in the endorsed copy of the financial plan, as it endorsed at the previous meeting, it was actually a very different item 2 that was there, which spoke to the concept of establishing a minimum spend in sustainability and climate change area. So I've definitely got some reservations around that one, and I'd just like to foreshadow that I will be moving another motion that will have that as a change if this one's to lapse. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Herry. Would anybody else like to talk on the recommendation? No? Councillor Herry, you do have a right to reply as no one has. You're okay. So I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Vote. All those against? Is Councillor Herry. The recommendation is carried then. Thank you, Sarah. Could we please move to item 13.2, the annual report?
Thank you. So each year we present an annual report which reports on how we did in implementing the priorities and projects set out in the council plan from the year before. So the annual report is attached, having been reviewed by Fargo. I do want to note for councillors there are 4 changes or corrections required to the annual report that is attached here, and I'll just read through those and then ask that the councillors just present an alternative recommendation to enable us to incorporate those into the final document. So in the financial statements, unfortunately, some of the content was inadvertently cut out when the statements were all compiled together in the document. So these are page 77, the income statement variance commentary, to enable us to reinsert notes 12 and 13. Page 105 to insert note 6.2c, which relates to property, infrastructure, plant and equipment. Page 120 to insert some missing text from the end of note 9.3 relating to superannuation contributions. So my apologies for that, some of the copy that we accidentally cut off when combining all these financial statements together. The last change is in the report of operations, which is a correction of the result relating to the percentage change in council emissions, to correct that from a 2.91% decrease to a 17% increase. This is because the original figure, the minus 2.91%, was originally erroneously reported against council's baseline from 2015-16. When the target in the council report against which we need to report on relates to our variance to the actuals from 2019-20. There was actually an increase in emissions from 2019-20 to 2020-21 for 2 key reasons. The first one is that 2019-20 was a very low emissions year, and that's because of all the impacts of the COVID lockdowns and less use of fuel and what have you. Also in 2020-21, council expanded the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre, so some increase in power used required to run those expanded facilities. So those are the 4 changes, Mr. Mayor, that we're seeking to incorporate into the annual report, if councillors will indulge me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Can I have someone move that, including those changes? Thank you. Councillor Bustle to move and Councillor Fuller to second.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move it as an alternative, if I can, please, with the incorporation of those 4 corrections to the recommendation, please.
Sorry, now I called for Councillor Bustle. Are you happy to move with those changes as per Councillor Fuller? And you're happy to second that, Councillor Fuller? Thank you. Councillor Bustle, do you want to talk on this?
Not at the moment, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll give you the right at the end. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Council's performance statement at the end of June 2021, going over it again over the last week, and I'm particularly proud of Council's achievements in the past year, especially because of the challenging circumstances we've been working and living within. The annual report is an opportunity to reflect on these changes and these achievements. Our regional city is dynamic and intrinsically interconnected to the Victorian economy. As a council, we've been quick to adapt to the ongoing challenges of COVID in Victoria. We've worked hard to ensure support is provided to our community where it is needed, that our services and facilities are not disrupted more than is necessary, and that we maintain our long-term focus on the community vision and continue to invest in the future of the rural city of Wangaratta. Over the year, we've worked closely with the community to develop our council plan and 12-year community vision. The extensive process of deliberative engagement saw the formation of a 126-member Shape Wangaratta panel and more than 1,000 responses to the community survey, an incredible outcome. It was vital that our community vision and council plan represent the views of the community across the entire region, as these are documents which guide our priorities. This year I was especially proud to officially launch two significant projects, being the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre and the Railway Precinct Enhancement Program. The Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre was completed in December 2020 and is already proving to bring enormous benefits to this community. It had an outstanding summer season, even with all the COVID lockdown periods, and we're looking forward to a bigger one towards the end of this year now and into the new year. In May, we also celebrated the completion of the new look $8.5 million railway precinct. The aim of this project was to create a welcoming gateway to Wangaratta, drive investment, and most importantly, to create a place for our local residents to enjoy and to come together. As such, it was only fitting to launch the precinct with a brilliant community event with local musicians, artists and businesses. The artwork on the beacon of the tower was lit up for the first time with an interactive display. I won't talk about the many challenges brought by this pandemic, but instead highlight the positives that have come out, like the growth in our Grit and Resilience program over the past financial year. This 4-year initiative funded by the federal government is playing a vital role in helping our community to unite and build strength, courage and connection with each other, so that we can overcome the hardships together. That's what we do in a community. It's exciting to see these changes and connections that is being created. So on behalf of my fellow councillors, I'd like to thank our community for their input into the many consultations conducted during the year. Your ideas, your opinions and your feedback are always important in ensuring we're driving our municipality towards the vision you want. I'd like to thank our fellow councillors for helping out on this, Council CEO and our management team, our officers for their hard work and resilience. Over the past year, we've seen massive growth in our regional areas. Our communities have proved that regional stands for resilience, responsive and receptive transitioning to remote ways of working while still achieving great results. The rural city of Wangaratta is a place to visit, invest and live, provide a unique perspective on work and life balance and being a gateway to their primary food production, manufacturing and innovation with an abundance of natural outdoor activities right on our doorstep. We have the Goldilocks theory. We're not too big, we're not too small, and with close access to the big city, I think we're just right. Our region presents the opportunity for people who are now looking for places that have strong sense of community and where they can build connections to live, work and to raise families. I'm proud to recognise the achievements of our council over the last year in this annual report. We are still facing a time of uncertainty and challenge. I have confidence that our strong, resilient and motivated community will continue to thrive together. Thank you. Would anybody else like to talk on the recommendation? Councillor Benton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to point out the fact that the comments of the Vargo report back to council was very positive, particularly over the last 12 months. And if anyone wants to bother reading the figures in the report, how we've been able to manage this 12 months, particularly with the COVID, and has an enormous impact within our businesses and our expenditure and our income. And to do all that and maintain the figures that we've got in that report, I think we can be truly proud of ourselves. And I think the Vargo report does that, and the officers that have been able to pull this together, it's no mean feat to be able to do it, and it's a statutory document, it's not something we're just doing for fun of it, we've got to do it. We're very complimentary, in my opinion, to the way those figures and the report was presented to the Vargo. Thank you.
Councillor Irene Grant.
Thank you, Mayor Rees, and I'd like to reiterate the comments made by Councillor Benton, but also to reiterate the comments that you made, Mayor Rees, in terms of the annual report statement and the fact that we have been able to achieve what has been in a very difficult environment with drought. We've had bushfires, we've had COVID, and the rural city of Wangaratta has managed to hold its own in a very, very positive way, and I think we can build on the work that we've done and move into the future with a great deal of confidence, and I think it's a testament to the work of the council staff and the enthusiasm and the dedication of the councillors as well, and the community who supports us in our endeavours.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Great comments. Now the council like to talk. I'll come back to Councillor Bussell as the mover to finish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Wangaratta is an amazing place, and as you've well covered all the positives, the one things that councils do is give people faith to invest and come here. And I think the next 3 years in the rural city of Wangaratta will be some of the most amazing times, amazing opportunities over the next 3 years. And it's just a most welcoming place here in Wangaratta. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour accepting the annual report. The recommendation is carried. Thank you. I'll now go to 13.3. Sarah, you write with our complaints policy.
Thank you. So Section 107 of the Local Government Act also requires Council to adopt a complaints policy. So there is attached a draft proposed policy that meets the requirements of the Act and is based on our previous complaints handling policy together with a good practice guide for councils. So the request is now that councillors endorse that draft complaints policy to be able to commence a community consultation process for 28 days, that we give public notice, inviting written submissions, and that we then consider those submissions and either return with an updated policy, or if no submissions are made, that council proceeds to adopt that policy following the end of the submission period. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Brindley. Can I have a mover, please, for that recommendation? Councillor Fitzpatrick, and a seconder, please. Councillor Herry. Would any councillor like to talk on the complaints policy? Councillor Fitzpatrick, no, as the mover. No. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. Thank you, Sarah. Director Brindley, sorry. 13.4 is the 2021-22 Q1 forecast review. Thank you.
Thank you. So we report quarterly to Council on our financial performance versus budget for transparency of how we're progressing. So this is the report for the end of the first 3 months of the financial year. I won't go into great detail, but the report does provide some detailed commentary about the variances, the positive and negative variances throughout the financial statements. But in summary, and ask that the councillors review and approve the Q1 forecast review, including the improvement to the projected full-year accounting surplus of $309,000, the increase to capital works expenditure of $1.21 million, of which $888,000 relates to works carried over from the last financial year, and also the environmental upgrade agreement quarterly statement, which we are now required to include. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Can I have a move of the recommendation, please? Councillor Herry to move, and Councillor Fuller to second that. Would any councillor like to talk on the recommendation? No, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. Thank you, Director Brindley. I'll now move on to Infrastructure Services. Director Goonan at 14.1 is a petition for the request of a footpath along Scott Street and child-safe railing on the footbridge over the 3 Mile Creek. Thank you, Director Goonan.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. This report is presented to Council for consideration of the petition that you just mentioned, It had 108 signatures and was tabled at Council's ordinary meeting on the 28th of September. The petition requests Council to consider construction of a footpath along Scott Street and installation of child-safe railing on the footbridge over 3 Mile Creek. The recommendation from officers is that Council endorse the construction of the Scott Street footpath as it currently sits in the long-term financial plan, which is estimated to be in the 7 to 10 year period, as per the current footpath priority program, seeks independent advice on the suitability of the current bridge railing and, if required, installs safety barriers, places improved signage on the bridge approaches advising riders to dismount their bicycles when crossing 3 Mile Bridge, and responds to the first signatory.
Thank you, Director Green. Can I have a mover of that recommendation coming forward? Councillor Fuller to move. Councillor Grant, happy to second that. Thank you. Councillor Fuller, did you need to talk on that recommendation? No. Councillor Grant? Would any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? No. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. Thank you. I'll now move on to items number 15 in our agenda, which is development services. We have an item at 15.1. I'd just like to state out we won't be discussing that issue. It's been withdrawn by the applicant, and we will be moving straight to 15.2. Thank you, Director Swart. The Domestic Animal Management Plan 2021 to 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about Council's draft Domestic Animal Management Plan 2021 to 2025. Council has a statutory obligation under the Domestic Animals Act to prepare a Domestic Animal Management Plan and submit it to State Government for approval. Council's current plan is due to expire at the end of this year, and a new draft plan has been prepared and is ready to go out for community consultation. The draft plan is attached to the agenda. The plan details how Council will manage its domestic animal population, including ensuring animals are registered with Council. The officer's recommendation include that Council endorses the draft plan for community consultation and invite feedback.
Thank you, Director Swart. Can I please have a mover for that? Councillor Benton, and a seconder. Councillor Herry, thank you. Councillor Benton, did you want to talk on this?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in adopting this motion, I do want to make one comment in relationship to the Domestic Animals Act that we've got to adopt. It is very much an urbanised document in relationship to pet animals. Now, a person that has experienced wild dog attack, the anomaly that comes about is the people have to identify a wild dog, and a wild dog isn't a domesticated dog gone wild. And you can't get, as a prime producer, much help from the authorities because it has to be identified as a wild dog. And I think, although I'm supporting this motion, there is an anomaly there that we probably have to pursue to make sure that all authorities understand what a domestic dog is. Because at the end of the day, it's very hard to make sure if it barks and it looks like a dog out in the wild, it should be a wild dog, but it's not. And the council struggled with that because in my personal experience was that we had to find out the dog was a wild dog. And that relates back to the native dog that we have in Australia. So I'll just put that out there that I'll be pursuing that a little bit further later. I support this because we have to have it, and it does relate a lot to the urban, but we are a rural municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Would anybody else like to talk on the recommendation? No, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Benton, did you want to finish on? No? I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour of accepting the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Director Swart. 15.3 is the proposed dog off-leash areas under Section 26 of the Domestic Animals Act.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about proposed off-leash areas for dogs in Wangaratta. Council invited community feedback on proposed designated off-leash areas in July this year. As a result of that process, we received 102 submissions, including one petition with 233 signatures. The submissions raised a range of different issues, but the majority of the responses related to the Northern Beaches area that at that point was not proposed to be included as an off-leash area. Submissions have been considered by council officers, and as a result, officers recommend that council designate 7 off-leash areas for dogs, and it's listed in the agenda. The recommended off-leash areas now include the Northern Beaches and exclude the rodeo grounds.
Thank you, Director Swart. Can I have someone move that recommendation? Councillor Bustle to move the recommendation, and a seconder. Councillor Herry. Councillor Bustle.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank all the people that took the time to write in submissions. I think that's very, very important. Secondly, in our Australian landscape, dogs walking off lead is not something new. And I think we acknowledge the health benefits, particularly since COVID, of having pets. And there might be a balancing act between our environment, our city environment, and dogs. But at the end of the day, the benefits to our people here having pets and happy people, far outweigh anything else, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bustle. Would anybody else like to talk on the off-leash? Councillor Herry, please.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Absolutely concur with Councillor Bustle's comments. It is very important to maintain the health of our community, and not just the physical well-being that can come from a walk in a bush environment with your dog, but also from the mental health benefits. And it definitely is a balancing challenge that I guess we've got in front of us tonight. And it's very rare that you can strike the absolute perfect balance. Ultimately, you need to establish compromise. A lot of the submissions, and I thank everyone for their time to put in the submissions, but there was a lot of indication that dogs don't necessarily have a negative impact on that environmental area, which I'm not fully convinced of, not at all. I think when a dog's running off lead, who knows what it's doing in the bushes, but ultimately, conversely, I don't see a really solid evidence base that clearly demonstrates why dogs in particular must be on leash and must be controlled, when you've got a lot of other kind of negative impacts upon the environment down there, like the wild rabbits and also the noxious weeds that are through there. So there are a lot of things that I probably control first before controlling dogs and their ability for the owners to enjoy a walk in the bush with them running off lead. So I'm generally inclined to maintain the status quo with respect to that particular area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I also am of the view that happy people, happy pets. It's I think a good outcome. We certainly have had to consider and weigh up the competing interests and issues, and certainly the environment has been a major consideration. But I feel, given that it's not an environment that hasn't been impacted by weeds and cats and every other rabbits and the like. I think we've got an opportunity now perhaps to do some better management in that area. And I know that many of the people who spoke to me about their concerns of walking their dogs off leash really put themselves forward as custodians of that particular location, and they're undertaking to actually care for it and look after it. I think whatever we do, we can't legislate against people who don't do the right thing. Those people will continue to do the wrong thing, but we as a community, I think, need to work together to ensure that we do get the best outcome and that we are able to live in harmony with people that have pets that they love and they clearly love and look after, and we have an opportunity of making the Northern Beaches a better place than it is with the assistance of the people that use it currently.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. I'd also like to comment that listening to Director Swart there in our previous briefings about the amount of petitions, not petitions, by the amount of incoming queries on, especially the majority of those 200 and something replies. Can you tell me that number again?
So we received 102 submissions and one petition included in that with 233
signatures. Correct. And most of that would be concerning the Northern Beaches area. I would say the majority of that was. And I'd say to the people that put their name on that petition and wrote in their applications, Council is listening. So I'd like to thank Stephen's team, with Claire Cowdery in that, for listening to the recommendation of what the people wanted, which is here in front of us, to include the Northern Beaches in that off-leash area of what the public want. So thank you for listening to us. Thank you. Councillor Bustle, would you like to finish off?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been so much work done by the staff. My only disappointment with this is that we can't put the dingoes on leads that I see killing my sheep, and that'd be great if we could get their owners to put them on a lead. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bustle. So I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is accepted. Thank you. Thank you, Director Swart, for your input tonight. I'd now like to move on to item number 18, and I'm referring to item 17.1 before that. We're moving that to 18.1, as the minutes of the advisory committee should be not a record of advisory committee reports. It is the minutes of the advisory committee meetings to be at 18.1, and I'll hand over to CEO McGrath.
Thank you, Mayor. We have minutes of the advisory committee meetings of the Arts, Culture, Heritage Advisory Committee and the Wangaratta Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee from August and September, therefore noting by Council.
Thank you, CEO McGrath. Can someone move that? Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Fuller to second. There's no conversation on that. Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Fuller. I'll move to the all those in favour of that recommendation. The recommendation is carried. Thank you. We'll move on. There's no notice of motions and no urgent business, but however, there is public question time. Now, there are two questions from Brian Fox. Firstly, I'd like to state that in public question time, these questions were directed to CEO McGrath, and as they were directed to CEO McGrath, I should not have to go over them in this council meeting. The council meeting is directed by councillors here at the table. So if you have a public question, you need to direct it either through to me and then through to the council. I will then ask for either Director Goonan, Director Brindley, Director Swart, or the CEO, or my fellow councillors, or myself to answer back of those questions. So I'm just making it known this is council meeting, not a CEO's meeting or a director's meeting. So in the future, could all questions be directed to myself or my fellow councillors? I will also state these questions from Brian Fox have been asked and answered on many occasions and are now being brought back to a council meeting, of which again, I don't have to allow it, but I will, out of the decency of my good nature, Brian. And then I will direct, on these occasions, Director Goonan to answer them. These questions are questions that have been asked and directed as a CRMS, which is a customer request, and can be answered that way and have been in the past. So the first question relates to the car park behind the Wangaratta Club. This car park, in my view, is an embarrassing state of disrepair. The car park revamp has come up year after year at budget time and does not get funded for various reasons, one of which I see is out of sight, out of mind. So Brendan, and I will cross Brendan out and put, so councillors, I would like you to supply abutting building owners and the business operators a date to when this project will be completed. In the meantime, and Brendan again I will cross out as it's a council meeting, councillors, I ask you to review the supplied photographs of the said car park and instigate urgent repairs. Director Goonan, we've spoken about this car park area in the past. Would you like to give a response on this?
I can, thank you, Mayor. The project is in Council's long-term financial plan for the year 26-27. So as far as offering a completion date, I would say July 2027 would be my best guess at this point in time. The detailed design for this car park has been completed. I walked the car park today. There are certainly some potholes, and we will be instructing our maintenance staff to go out and rectify those potholes in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Director Goonan. Again, this is the end of this question from from Brian Fox, and as far as council is concerned, it has been asked and answered on numerous occasions, and we are finished. The second question relates to the speed hump cum pedestrian crossing in Oven Street between Safeway and council buildings. I have contacted officers on the council who expressed their view that this arrangement complies with regulations. Brendan again has noted here, it's nothing to do with Brendan, this is a council meeting, it's a council question. It's councillors, I am asking you to walk across the particular structure and note the multiple gouge marks in the raised asphalt pavement made by the undercarriage and tow equipment on multiple vehicles. I am asking you, councillors, to take action to prevent damage to motor traffic. Again, this question has been asked Mr. Fox, and I directed Director Goonan to talk to Mr. Fox directly about it, of which he has. But again, Director Goonan, could you reply and answer?
Certainly. As per previous information supplied to Mr. Fox, the profile of the pedestrian crossing is greater than the guidelines require. There is some minor scrape marks on the crossing, particularly heading northbound. The raised crossing is performing very well, providing a safe crossing point for pedestrians across Oven Street. There is no plans to change the crossing or its profile.
Thank you, Director Goonan. Again, question has been asked and answered on numerous occasions. This is it. I feel the pedestrian crossing personally, I'm happy for councillors to reply on it, is a great one for slowing traffic, and that is a reason why we have these pedestrian crossings, not just for the safe access of pedestrians, for the slowing of the traffic, and it does work and works very well in a high traffic flow area. Thank you, Director Goonan. That is the end of public question time. Got item number 22, confidential business. I'll now refer to Councillor Herry.
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to move the motion that, in accordance with section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting be closed to members of the public for the consideration of the following item. 22.1, Ivones Lane Bridge. Item 22.1 is determined to be confidential on the grounds specified in section 3(1)(e) and 3(1)(f) of the Local Government Act 2020, as it contains legal privileged information and personal information.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Fuller, are we all in favour? Okay. Excuse us, ladies and gentlemen, while we move to the following room, and we'll be back with you in a moment to conclude our meeting. Thanks, Rebecca. Councillor Herry.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. I move the motion that the council be reopened to members of the public.
Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Grant. All those in favour? Thank you. We're back open to the public. So, ladies and gentlemen, this draws a conclusion to our meeting for tonight, the 26th of October 2021. Thank you all who are online participating. Thank you to all my council colleagues and our corporate management team. Also to Zoe and Rebecca for your time here tonight. I appreciate you staying back and making sure that we're online correctly. So, ladies and gentlemen, have a great afternoon or great evening and enjoy our great weather in our thriving